And to tell us more about today's working level talks between the two Koreas, Dr. Ko Myong-hyun, a research fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies, joins us in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so the working level talks, which have been postponed from yesterday to today, took place today at the southern side of Panmunjeom between the two Koreas for discussion on protocols, security, and media coverage for the April 27th summit. So what came out of today's talks?
Well, we just heard that the meeting just wrapped up, so the details of the agreement haven't been out yet. But then we know what the South Korean side put on the table for discussion. And as I just mentioned, it was about security, protocol, and also the media coverage. I understand the South Korean side, put forward the idea of live broadcasting of the meeting.
Okay.
This is a very important element in the sense that it's going to increase the impact of the significance of this historical meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Moon Jae-in. And security is a very touchy point as well because it should be the first time ever leader of North Korea is setting foot on the southern side of the DMZ ever since the end of the Korean War. So in that sense, we can imagine that the North Korean side must be very sensitive about the security. And finally, the protocol is another element in which it's going to dramatize and give more significance to the meeting. And in this case, how Kim Jong-un is going to reach down to the southern part of Panmunjeom is going to be very important. And then one idea that's being discussed and put on the table by the South Korean side is to have Kim Jong-un cross the so-called military demarcation line that divides the Panmunjeom village into two, the northern side and the southern side. So in that sense, if Kim Jong-un and North Korean side can stage this dramatic entrance into the southern side.
It's going to be quite symbolic.
Exactly, crossing the MDR by foot. I think it's going to increase the impact of the summit.
So how likely is North Korea to accept that plan?
Well, there are, and I think it's in the interest of North Korea as well to increase the public impact of the meeting. I mean, after all, North Korea is in a propaganda drive in order to showcase how North Korea is a normal state after all, and then also it's going to contribute to the peace and stability in the peninsula as well as the region. So therefore, it's in the interest of North Korea put itself in the best light possible, and putting inter-Korean dialogue in the framework of a reconciliation. It certainly is interested. It's an interest of North Korea. So, what's the best way to dramatize that? It's to show Kim Jong-un crossing the borderline between North and South. So I think North Korea will be receptive to the idea, but then again, Panmunjeom happened to be places of many instances of defections, where the defectors from the northern side cross to the southern side the same way that Kim Jong-un is going to cross, if he's going to cross the line. And so I think that's probably also an element, issue that North Korea is probably taking into account right now.
Now, who are some of the main figures that headed the delegations, both South Korea and North Korea, for today's talks?
Oh, these are both on North Korean side and the South Korean side. The head envoys happen to be very high level.
Okay.
The one from South Korea was his name is Kim Jong-un. He's the senior director of NIS, the National Intelligence Service, and he's in charge of North Korea. And he was part of the delegation, high-level delegation that visited Pyongyang earlier last month to meet with Kim Jong-un and agree on holding the inter-Korean summit. So in that sense, he's a very high level, and he's definitely a key member of the policy-making team in this administration that's driving the agenda of inter-Korean talks. So we can imagine he brought with him important messages for North Korea. And on the North Korean side, we had Kim Chang-sun, who was nominally is the secretary of the State Council, one of the governing bodies, top governing body of North Korea, but is believed to be the chief of staff for Kim Jong-un. So in that sense, we had very high-level people at the meeting, and chances that they discuss more than just protocol, security, and logistics of the meeting. So,
Now, some experts have been saying that the summit preparations have been going quite smoothly compared to the preparations that we saw back for the summits, inter-Korean summits in 2000 and 2007. So how do preparations for the past summits compare to the ones right now?
Well, clearly the third time's a charm. So the first time was it was the first time. The first summit in 2000 was the first time ever the leader of two Koreas met. So there's a lot of tension and a lack of trust. So for that reason alone, it was very difficult to convene the high-level meeting back then. In 2007, there's a little bit of a back and forth kind of between the two Koreas, especially between Kim Jong-il, and the father of the current leader, and Myong-hyun, then the president of South Korea. And then even though the two Koreas had agreed on a common agenda for discussion, apparently the agenda wasn't really agreed upon until the very last day of the meeting. So there's a little bit of a drama there too. But compared to these two previous instances, this time around, North Korea is behaving in a very open manner, very cooperative and then positive. So I think that's the reason why the whole preparation talks are going very smoothly.
So you talked about the agenda for the summit. Now, when do you think the agenda will be actually put on the table and discussed between the two Koreas? I mean, what will be discussed between the two leaders for the summit?
So I think the agenda will be settled down very soon. I mean, after all, we only have less than a month left until the meeting. So that, but then we can imagine that the agenda is going to possibly include two major topics. One is going to be about furthering the inter-Korean dialogue, other with people-to-people exchanges, especially with humanitarian exchanges, such as meeting of separated families. But a very important topic to be discussed is probably going to be the discussion about the North Korea's denuclearization.
Right.
In a way, because the inter-Korean summit is going to take place before the U.S. DPRK summit scheduled for the end of May.
Right.
It's going to be some sort of way to set the stage for the upcoming U.S. DPRK summit. And we know when it comes to Trump and Kim Jong-un, the only issue they're going to discuss about is going to be about denuclearization. So chances that North Korea is going to make a in principle commitment to complete or at least a high level of denuclearization, probably more so than the people are expecting right now at the Inter-Korean Summit. So it's going to be a preview of the upcoming U.S. DPRK agenda, in my view.
But North Korea has been pushing for this phased and simultaneous denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, whereas U.S. President Donald Trump has been calling for a complete and total denuclearization. So there's a big difference there still.
That's right. So, but then I think in order to reach that the agreement, overlapping agreement between the two sides, say like North Korea and the United States, they have to start from a common point.
Right.
So in this case, North Koreans are saying they're going to commit to denuclearization, which is exactly what the U.S. side is asking North Korea to do. So when it comes to the methodology of how to carry out denuclearization, that's going to be a different issue. And that's, as you mentioned, it's going to be very controversial and very arduous time for the two sides to figure out how North Korea is going to execute this ambitious denuclearization program. So that's going to be the major challenge from now until the U.S. DPRK summit. So I think President Moon is expecting that having the inter-Korean summit in between is going to help in terms of a dialogue between North Korea and the United States.
Now, we have the working level talks on communications hotline between the two Koreas coming up on this Saturday. So the hotline has been deactivated for about a decade. So what does the re-establishment of this communications hotline mean for the two Koreas?
Well, it's highly symbolic. It's just, it's not like a significant measure by itself, because in the sense, if you have a hotline, but if the other side doesn't pick up the phone, that doesn't really mean much in many ways. So it's another way of signaling to the rest of the world, to South Korea and the United States and the international community, that there's going to be high level of communication and trust between the two Koreas, and also there's a practical ramifications as well. So theoretically speaking, if there's a hotline between President Moon and then Kim Jong-un, it's possible for President Moon to pick up the phone and reach out to Kim Jong-un anytime he feels the need to do so. So it really lowers the bar for dialogue between the two Koreas. So this is in a sense, it's actually dramatic if it's carried out in that way, because until just last year, there's no talk whatsoever between the two Koreas, and South Korea was actually trying hard to reach out to Pyongyang. So it's quite a day and night change in terms of a level of communication between the two Koreas.
And it's even better that the two leaders do speak the same language.
Exactly.
Yes.
But then language has never been a barrier when it comes to inter-Korean talks.
Now, during Saturday's meeting, officials are expected to discuss a lot of the technical aspects of reestablishing this hotline. So what are some of those technical aspects?
So I think a technical aspect would be in this case to how to, probably it's to arrange the protocols of the phone call. So chances that neither side wants the other side to just pick up the phone and call anytime they want. So I think it's going to be about how to prearrange phone calls and so forth and so forth. But when it comes to technical aspect of it, how to set up the line and ensure a security of the conversation, and that's going to be up to each side's relevant agencies.
Now, Japanese Foreign Minister Kono Taro is arranging his first visit to South Korea as a foreign minister. So what is Mr. Taro looking to achieve during his trip to South Korea this time around?
Which is very similar to the way China has been trying to raise its profile and remind the world that China was still influential in the Korean dialogue by inviting Kim Jong-un to Beijing. So in that sense, I think Minister Kono is coming to Seoul to remind Seoul that Japan is an ally of South Korea. There's a trilateral security cooperation going on between Japan, South Korea, and the United States. So the Japanese interest has to be taken into account when it comes to the inter-Korean dialogue, just as the Chinese interests are going to be taken into account when it comes to the inter-Korean meeting. So, and then Minister Kono is coming to Seoul to remind President Moon that the top concern for the Japanese government is the issue of Japanese victims of North Korean abduction. So officially there are thought to be, according to the Japanese government, there are around 12 victims of abduction still remaining in North Korea. And then the Japanese government has been pressing the North Korean side to clarify the fate of those 12 abductees. So I think that's going to be on top of Japanese government's agenda.
Japan has been worrying a lot about being skipped over, as Mr. Trump puts it. And I think Japan has been trying to reach out to North Korea as well, trying to have a summit with Kim Jong-un and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Well, what are the chances of us seeing that happening?
So, that's not likely at this point. As I mentioned before, when it comes to the meeting between North Korea and Japan, this is the least urgent one for North Korea, in the sense that Japan is already on the side of the United States. So there's not much to be discussed between North Korea and Japan, because North Korea already has agreed to have a meeting with the United States already. So, what Japan can do at this point is to offer economic assistance to North Korea and make this whole meeting a transactional meeting. That's probably the only way that Japan can incentivize North Korea to come out and have a meeting with them.
And we also heard that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe requested that President Moon Jae-in visit Japan before the inter-Korean summit, and some have actually criticized that this is not the right timing to ask for such a request.
So clearly that's not going to be logistically possible at this point, because we only have less than a month left. And but then we know that the North Korea has, in a way, surprised us by going to Beijing before having, coming to the inter-Korean summit. So I think the Japanese are reminding South Korea that just like China is on the side of North Korea, Japan is on the side of South Korea. So in a way, Japan would like to see a reaffirmation of the bond between the two countries before the inter-Korean meeting takes place.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Oh, you're welcome.